Clover dropped to her knees to his side. "Boxer," she cried, "how are you?" "It's my lung," said Boxer in a weak voice. "It doesn't matter. I think you will be able to finish the windmill without me. There's a pretty good store of stone accumulated. I had only another month to go in any case. To tell you the truth, I had been looking forward to my retirement, and perhaps as Benjamin is growing too old, they will let him retire at the same time and be a companion to me." "We must get help at once," said Clover. "Run, somebody, and tell Squealer what has happened." All the other animals immediately raced back to the farmhouse to give Squealer the news. Only Clover remained, and Benjamin, who lay down at Boxer's side, and without speaking, kept the flies off of him with his long tail. After about a quarter of an hour, Squealer appeared, full of sympathy and concern. He said that Comrade Napoleon had learned with very deep distress of this misfortune to one of the most loyal workers on the farm, and was already making arrangements to send Boxer to be treated at the hospital at Wellington. The animals felt a little uneasy at this. Except for Molly and Snowball, no other animals had ever left the farm, and they did not like to think of their sick comrade on the hands of human beings. However, Squealer easily convinced them that the veterinary surgeon at Wellington could treat Boxer's case more satisfactorily than could be done on the farm. And about half an hour later, when Boxer had somewhat recovered, he was with difficulty got on his feet and managed to limp back to his stall, where Clover and Benjamin had prepared a good bed of straw for him. For the next 2 days Boxer remained in his stall. The pigs had sent out a large bottle of pink medicine, which had found in the medicine chest in the bathroom. Clover administered it to Boxer twice a day after her meals. In the evening she lay in his stall and talked to him, while Benjamin kept the flies off of him. Boxer professed not to be sorry for what had happened. If he made a good recovery, he might expect to live another 3 years, and he looked forward to peaceful days that he would spend in the corner of the big pasture. It would be the first time that he had leisure to study and improve his mind. He intended, he said, to devote the rest of his life to learning the remaining 22 letters of the alphabet. However, Benjamin and Clover could only be with Boxer after working hours, and it was to the middle of the day when the van came to take him away. The animals were at work weeding turnips under the supervision of the pig, when they were astonished to see Benjamin coming galloping from the direction of the farm building, braying at the top of his voice. It was the first time that they had ever seen Benjamin excited. Indeed, it was the first time that anyone had ever seen him gallop. "Quick! Quick!" he shouted. "Come at once! They're taking Boxer away!" Without waiting for orders from the pigs, the animals broke off work and raced back to the farm buildings. Sure enough, there in the yard was a large closed van, drawn by 2 horses, with lettering on the side, and a sly-looking man in a low-crowned bowler hat sitting in the driver's seat, and Boxer's stall was empty. The animals crowded round the van. "Goodbye, Boxer," they chorused. "Goodbye." "Fools! Fools!" shouted Benjamin, prancing around them and stamping the earth with his small hoofs. "Fools! Do you not see what is written on the side of the van?" That gave the animals pause, and there was a hush. Muriel began to spell out the words, but Benjamin pushed her aside. In the midst of a deadly silence he read, "Alfred Simmons, horse slaughterer and glue boiler, Wellington, dealer in hides and bone meal, kennels supplied. Do you not understand what this means? They are taking Boxer to the knackers." A cry of horror burst from all the animals. At this moment the man in the box whipped up his horse, and the van moved out of the yard at a small trot. All the animals followed, crying at the top of their voices. Clover forced his way to the front. The van began to gather speed. Clover tried to stir her stout limbs to gallop, and achieved a canter. "Boxer!" she cried. "Boxer! Boxer! Boxer!" And just at that moment, as though he had heard the uproar outside, Boxer's face, with the white stripe down his nose, appeared at the small window of the back of the van. "Boxer!" cried Clover in a terrible voice. "Boxer, get out! Get out quickly! They're taking you to your death!" All the animals took up the cry of, "Get out, Boxer! Get out!" But the van was already gathering speed, and drawing away from them. It was uncertain whether Boxer had understood what Clover had said, but a moment later his face disappeared from the window, and there was a sound of tremendous drumming of hoofs inside the van. He was trying to kick his way out. The time had been when a few kicks from Boxer's hoofs would have smashed the van into matchwood, but alas, his strength had left him, and in a few moments the sound of drumming hoofs grew fainter and died away. In desperation, the animals began appealing to the two horses which drew the van to stop. "Comrades! Comrades!" they shouted. "Don't take your own brother to his death!" But the stupid brutes, too ignorant to realize what was happening, merely set back their ears and quickened their pace. Boxer's face did not reappear in the window. Too late, someone thought of racing ahead and shutting off the 5-barrel gate. But in another moment the van was through it and rapidly disappeared down the road. Boxer was never seen again. 3 days later it was announced that he had died in the hospital at Willington, in spite of receiving every attention a horse could have. Squealer came to announce the news to the others. He had, he said, been present during Boxer's last hours. "It was a most affecting sight I have ever seen," said Squealer, lifting his trotter and wiping away a tear. "It was at his bedside, the very last, and at the end, almost too weak to speak, he whispered in my ear, and his sole sorrow was to have passed on before the windmill was finished. 'Forward, comrades,' he whispered, 'forward in the name of rebellion. Long live Animal Farm! Long live Comrade Napoleon! Napoleon is always right.' Those were his very last words, comrades." Here Squealer's demeanor suddenly changed. He fell silent for a moment, and his little eyes darted suspiciously glance from side to side before he proceeded. "It has come to his knowledge," he said, "that a foolish and wicked rumor had been circulated at the time of Boxer's removal. Some of the animals had noticed the van which took Boxer away was marked Horse Slaughterer, and had actually jumped into the conclusion that Boxer was being sent to the knackers. It was almost unbelievable," said Squealer, "that any animal could be so stupid. Surely," he cried indignantly, whisking his tail and skipping from side to side, "surely they knew their beloved leader, Comrade Napoleon, better than that." But the explanation was really very simple. The van had previously been property of the knacker, and had been bought by the veterinary surgeon, who had not yet painted out the old name. It was how this mistake had arisen. The animals were enormously relieved to hear this, and when Squealer went on to give further graphic details of Boxer's deathbed, the admirable care which he had received, and the expensive medicines for which Napoleon had paid without thought for the cost, at last doubts disappeared, and the sorrow that they felt for their comrade's death was tempered by the thought that at least he had died happily. Napoleon himself appeared at the meeting the following Sunday morning and pronounced a short oration in Boxer's honor. It had been possible, he said, to bring back the lamented comrade's remains for an interment on the farm, but he had ordered the large wreath to be made from the laurels of the farmhouse garden and sent down to be placed on Boxer's grave. In a few days' time the pig intended to hold a memorial banquet in Boxer's honor. Napoleon ended his speech with a reminder of Boxer's two favorite maxims: "I will work harder," and "Comrade Napoleon is always right." Maxims, he said, which every animal would do well to adopt for his own. On the day appointed for the banquet, a grocer's van drove up from Willington and delivered a large wooden crate at the farmhouse. That night there were sounds of uproarious singing, which was followed by what sounded like a violent quarrel, and ended about 11 o'clock with a tremendous clash of glass. No one stirred in the farmhouse before noon on the following day, and word went out that from somewhere or another the pigs had acquired the money to buy themselves another case of whiskey.